Have you ever run in and hired that passive-aggressive person that all of a sudden overnight there's kind of a toxicity in your practice? Have you ever hired that person that smiled well in the interview that turned out couldn't do anything? Have you ever hired that person that when you actually go to do a simple correction, they either break into tears or they want to right fight and argue back with you? If so, watch on. It's coming. Hey guys, Dr. Joel Parker here with the Standing Ovation Practice. Listen, I spent 17 years in private practice ownership, right in the trenches like some of you are, and then another 20 years, this recent 20 years, consulting over thousands of private practices just like yours. What I'm going to do with you here is share with you some of the gems that I've gleaned out on working with not good practices, but great standing ovation practices. Today we're talking about as part of the Diagnosis and Repair and Tune-Up series, we're talking about team member staffing, okay? And the selection of the positive versus negative people. I think you would all agree out there that you've experienced in your practice positive and negative people. I remember one of the best people we ever hired was a wonderful client who came into my practice named Susan Campbell with her dog Dugan. Susan would come in once a month to get the potatoes flushed out of Dugan's, the Cocker Spaniel's ears. And every time Susan would come into that practice, she would have the whole waiting area in stitches and laughing. You know, as it turns out, she was a retired airline stewardess who had worked with the major airlines for her career, and she was funny as all get out. Guess what? I hired her. That was the best hire I ever did because Susan was so positive. There wasn't really very much that fazed her. On the other hand, I did hire some negative people. In fact, some of them, beware the passive-aggressive people. I hired my fair share of passive-aggressive people. And sometimes if you hire them into important positions, such as your front-end person, you'll find almost instantly that the front end kind of sours. But if you hire them into the back like I did with a licensed vet tech, you'll find all kinds of weird things start to happen. Instead of the gain being to support the DVMs and everybody and get patient flows and so forth occurring, this licensed vet tech that I handled, for shits and giggles one day, rimmed my coffee cup with lidocaine gel so that after a few cups of coffee at 3 o'clock in the afternoon with a full waiting area, my face turned numb. And I had a WTF moment and was reaching to call 911 thinking I had a stroke. Now, at the time, I thought, maybe I don't have a good sense of humor. You know, maybe you know, that's kind of like first-year engineering boarding house humor kind of stuff. Maybe I don't have that. But if you look at that, that's a WTF moment. And I've talked to many professional practice managers that said, well, you fired her, right? And I said, oh, no, I thought I needed her, you know, because she was a licensed vet tech. I thought I couldn't do without her. But a good manager would recognize that as being a very passive-aggressive move to screw things up and fire their asses out of there. I eventually did fire that person, and overnight we were slightly short-staffed, but the practice boomed, okay? So you want to get the majority of your people positive up there. You want to recognize, beware of the passive aggressives, and the way we're going to do that, we want to use this maxim here when we're hiring team members, when we're staffing up our deck of team members. Okay, so that we're not overstaffed or understaffed. We need that very, very important person. We want to hire for smile and then train and drill for skill. Okay, so you're going to get that positive people are trainable. They don't have chips on their shoulder. When you ask them to do something, they don't right fight and give you back flashes and all that kind of stuff. I know many of you have experienced that. All you want to do is get home and see your kids before they get to bed, but you've got a technician that wants to right fight on how, when they took the radiograph of the cervical region, the metal choke chain was in the view. They want to argue how that's right when it's ridiculous, right? So you know the ones I'm talking about. So how do we hire for smile and drill for skill? And now what we're going to do, we're going to get into the interview section. Watch this. This is pretty sexy. How about that, eh? Whoa. Looks good, right? So we're going to do just a brief discussion of interviews. The first thing you need to know is that interviewers come in with a social veneer on. This is like a candy bar wrapper. right? And it's a marketing position that they come in marketing themselves as the best for your practice. So you could say stuff like, do you really care about people? Oh yeah, I care about people a lot. Do you like to help people? Absolutely like to help people. Yet the last time they helped somebody was 5 years ago, And so the important thing on this is to recognize that people come in with a social veneer, and oftentimes the social veneer, once it's stripped off, you'll see a happy person, a grumpy person, or kind of an apathetic person in there. It's different than the social veneer, usually. Sometimes on a rare occasion, on those 1 out of 20 people in Hiram, what you've got on the outside is who you got on the inside. I tell you guys, even if you do not need that staff member, if you got somebody that comes in your doors like that, you want to hire them. So how do you sort all this out? This is where a good working interview helps you strip off the social veneer. You're giving them some duties and watch what they do, not what they say they do. Okay, super important. And here's a little story for you. There's a practice I was working with. They were about to hire a manager that was going to be over all the staffing, was going to be over all the external marketing, over all the kind of, the reminders of people and so forth, the reactivation of clients that hadn't been in for a while. And they were this close to hiring her. And then they thought at the last minute, they kind of read through some of their hiring materials, and they pulled, like 10 files, and they sat her down and they said, okay, we want you to call these people and book them appointments. And there was this long kind of pregnant pause, this moment of silence. She looked up at him and said, you mean you want me to call and say I'm calling from this practice and book an appointment? And he went, yeah, we want you to do that. And she got this ghost white look in her face, and she got up and grabbed her purse and took off. Okay, so real. What they're doing is they're forcing her, before that, she was ticking all the right boxes, saying what she wanted, but when the action came down to picking up a file and picking up a phone and calling a client, she couldn't do it. So they dodged a bullet on that one, you guys. So the working interviews need to have people doing things so you can watch what they do and not what they say they do. Now, importantly here too, what I'd look for is if they don't do something right, what are they like when you correct them? Because the happy guys over here, these guys you want to hire, will go, oops, sorry, and they'll do it again, and they'll make a great effort to do it right. They're willing, they're excited, they're motivated to be part of the team. They'll try. They might not be perfect. You're not looking for perfection, guys. You're looking to see, is the person willing? Can they do a good job that you can craft into great? With these guys here, they'll get kind of pissed off. The apathetic guys may break into tears. And if you've got a passive-aggressive person, they may say that they'll do it, but then they won't do it in the end. And there's been some other examples on videos with people saying, yeah, I'll follow the policies, but they don't follow them. And sometimes that can even be in a long-time employee that's been working with you for 20 years, and you've got policy on that back door that says this door must be locked at all times. I don't know, what's your definition of all? 100%. So the policy says the back door should be locked at all times for patient control. If a patient gets out of a kennel and gets loose, they can't get out the back door. Yet sometimes these older long-term staff members, they just don't have the right attitude, and they keep leaving the door unlocked. So it's all over the map on this stuff, guys. What you're looking for here are these bright Energizer bunnies, the positive people who are willing and want to do their best. And this would be a little take-home action for you to really sit down, maybe with your manager, and make a list of all your staff and tick off, what's their attitudes like? Are they willing? If you go to correct them, do they right fight? That means they're trying to be right even though what they've done is wrong. Okay, it's like a trigger. You guys know what that means. It's like an emotional trigger that you try and correct them and they trigger and try and be right. It's almost impossible to work with. I've never really seen it work in the long run. But we're in an era right now, I don't know, I think it's always been that way. We're in an era where people are valuable. And all I'm saying is that if you find these positive people, then keep them, pay them well. They're 1 out of 20. They can make a huge difference in your practice. Okay, guys, hope you enjoyed this today. If you like this, please push that little like thumb button down below. Leave me a comment. Also hit subscribe and also turn on your notifications. And I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.